Diplomat Matthew Hayden stepped off the shuttle ramp, his boots crunching against the frost-covered ground. His every movement was deliberate, his demeanor calm, yet his mind was a storm of calculations. The Galactic Empire's sudden overture for peace after years of conflict was unprecedented, and Hayden had learned to distrust the unexpected. 2 armored escorts flanked him, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. They carried themselves with the rigid precision of soldiers, prepared for trouble but hoping to avoid it. The Empire's representatives were waiting in a domed structure at the edge of the landing zone. Its sleek metal walls reflected the cold glow of Zetherian's twin moons, a stark reminder of the technological supremacy the Empire wielded like a hammer. Hayden adjusted the lapel of his suit, its fabric interwoven with hidden fibers capable of deflecting a blade, but not much more. He had declined the heavier armor offered by Earth's Security Council. "I'm here to negotiate, not provoke," he'd said, though even then he doubted the truth of his own words. As he entered the dome, a faint hum greeted him. The sound of machinery, too quiet to pinpoint, but loud enough to unsettle. The room was Spartan, dominated by a long, low table of black glass. Seated at its far end was High Chancellor Emmerich Voss, the Empire's chief negotiator, his face framed by sharp features and eyes as cold as the void. "Hayden," Voss said, his voice smooth and unreadable, "you honor us with your presence." Hayden offered a curt nod, his practiced smile betraying none of his unease. "The honor is mutual, Chancellor. A chance at peace is worth any journey." Voss's lips twitched, though it was unclear whether the gesture was amusement or disdain. He gestured to the chair opposite him, and Hayden took his seat. His escorts remained by the entrance, their posture rigid. "You've caused us no small amount of trouble," Voss began, folding his hands on the table. "Your reputation precedes you." "Merely doing my duty," Hayden replied, his tone light. "I imagine the galaxy would prefer fewer battles and more trade routes." Voss's smile hardened. "Indeed, though some battles are inevitable." Before Hayden could respond, the hum in the room intensified. It was subtle at first, a vibration that teased the edges of perception, but it grew steadily until it became a tangible presence. Hayden's sharp eyes darted to the corners of the room, noting the faint shimmer of hidden energy fields. "I'd hoped we could start with mutual goodwill," Hayden said, his voice calm despite the tension creeping up his spine. Voss leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Goodwill is a luxury, Mr. Hayden, one we can no longer afford." The energy fields crackled to life, forming a shimmering barrier that isolated Hayden from his escorts. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "What is this?" Hayden demanded, his voice sharp but controlled. Voss rose, towering over the table like a specter. "A reckoning. Your clever words and schemes have delayed the inevitable long enough. The Empire does not negotiate with those who humiliate it." The realization struck like a physical blow. This wasn't a peace talk. It was an execution. Hayden's mind raced, searching for an escape, a way to turn the tables. But the Empire had planned this too well. The dome's walls shifted, revealing a live feed broadcasted to countless screens across the galaxy. Hayden's image filled the displays, framed by the cold precision of the Empire's machinery. A voice boomed, unmistakably imperial, announcing to the galaxy that the treacherous Diplomat would face justice. Hayden stood motionless, his expression unreadable. He had always known his role was dangerous, that diplomacy often teetered on the edge of war. But he hadn't expected his end to come here, in this sterile chamber under the watchful gaze of billions. "You think this will break humanity?" Hayden said, his voice steady. "You think a single death will silence us?" Voss tilted his head, studying him like a predator toying with its prey. "Not silence. Inspire fear. And fear, Mr. Hayden, is a weapon far sharper than any blade." The guards approached, their movements synchronized and efficient. Hayden did not resist as they bound his hands, though his mind worked furiously. Every step he took toward the execution chamber was deliberate, each glance calculated to convey calm defiance. He knew his death would ignite a fire in humanity's heart, a fire the Empire would come to regret. As the flames consumed him, Hayden's voice carried through the broadcast, clear and unwavering. This is not the end. Humanity will rise. The signal cut abruptly, plunging the galaxy into silence. On Earth, in the war room of the Unified Human Alliance, General William Price stared at the blank screen, his jaw tight. Captain Ronald Cross slammed a fist against the table, his face a mask of rage. Nearby, Dr. Henry Blake worked feverishly at a console, his fingers flying across the keys as he decrypted Hayden's final message. The room crackled with tension, the weight of their collective grief and fury palpable. Blake's console beeped, and his face paled as he read the decoded file. Hayden knew this would happen, Blake said, his voice shaking. He left us a message. And a plan. Price straightened, his eyes blazing with determination. Then we honor his sacrifice. We show the Empire what humanity is truly capable of. The war room erupted into motion, the wheels of retaliation turning. Hayden's name became a rallying cry, his final stand a beacon of resistance. And as Earth's forces prepared for the inevitable war, one truth burned brighter than the flames that had consumed him. The Empire had lit a fire they could not extinguish. The silence in the Unified Human Alliance's war room was shattered by the hum of holographic displays and the urgent clatter of fingers on keyboards. General William Price stood at the center, his tall frame casting a commanding shadow over the chaos. His expression was unreadable, a mask honed by decades of service. Around him, the faces of his officers betrayed varying shades of grief and fury. Hayden's execution had struck like a thunderbolt, electrifying humanity with a shared sense of loss and outrage. "Bring up the coded file," Price ordered, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority. The technicians complied, and the air filled with flickering streams of data. At a side console, Dr. Henry Blake hunched over a screen, his dark eyes darting between lines of code. The young scientist was known for his brilliance and an unsettling ability to see patterns others missed. Today, his usual sardonic humor was absent. Instead, his face was pale, his jaw tight with focus. "It's a tactical compendium," Blake said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Hayden must have been working on this for months. He's outlined the Empire's weaknesses, logistical vulnerabilities, fleet distribution, even structural flaws in their primary ship designs." "That's impossible," an officer muttered. How could he know all that? Price's steely gaze silenced the doubt. Hayden didn't play games. If he left this, it's because he intended for US to use it. What else does it say? Blake's fingers flew across the keyboard, isolating another section of the file. There's more. A directive. He called it Operation Bastion. It's a plan for total mobilization, coordinated strikes on critical Empire assets. But it's not just tactical, it's psychological. He's mapped out how to dismantle their morale. Captain Ronald Cross, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, straightened at those words. His piercing green eyes, sharp and restless, locked onto the display. Cross was a soldier of action, not a planner, but he understood the value of striking where it hurt most. "So, what are we waiting for?" he said, his voice rough with barely contained anger. "We hit them first, hit them hard." Price turned to him, his expression softening just enough to show he shared the captain's rage. "We will. But this isn't just about vengeance, Cross." Hayden wanted more than that. He wanted to ensure they can't recover. Cross stepped forward, his voice rising. "They burned him alive, General. They didn't just kill him. They made it a spectacle. If we hesitate, we'll look weak, and they'll use that against us." Price's eyes narrowed, his tone sharpening. "And if we rush him blind, we'll lose everything. Hayden trusted us to be smarter than that. Do I make myself clear, Captain?" Cross met his gaze, his jaw tightening, but he nodded. "Crystal." Blake cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the console. "There's another layer to this," he said, his tone cautious. The message includes a warning. The Empire's planning something big, something they think will end this war before it begins. Hayden didn't have all the details, but he highlighted a few leads. If we don't act quickly, we might not get the chance to fight back. Price absorbed this in silence, his mind already weighing the risks and possibilities. Finally, he turned to the room, his voice rising with conviction. Then we follow Hayden's plan. Effective immediately, all human colonies are to mobilize under the Unified Human Alliance. I want fleet commanders briefed within the hour. Dr. Blake, decrypt the rest of that file and find me every weakness we can exploit. Captain Cross, assemble a strike team. You'll lead the first offensive. Cross's eyes gleamed with grim determination. Where are we hitting first? The Empire supply chains. Price replied without hesitation. Hayden identified their reliance on key resource hubs in the Nizari sector. Cut those off, and their fleet won't be able to sustain prolonged operations. We'll bleed them dry before they realize what's happening. The room sprang into action, the weight of Hayden's loss transforming into a collective drive. Officers relayed orders across secure channels. Fleet movements were plotted and weapon systems readied. Humanity had been struck, but it would not fall. Hours later, aboard the flagship Giant, Captain Cross prepared his team for the first mission. The atmosphere in the briefing room was electric, a mix of tension and anticipation. Cross paced in front of a holographic display, his voice firm and commanding. "This isn't just another op," he said, addressing the dozen soldiers seated before him. "This is the start of something bigger. The Empire thinks they can break us by killing our leaders, by showing the galaxy they're untouchable. Our job is to prove them wrong." The hologram shifted, showing a sprawling supply depot orbiting a desolate planet. This is Outpost Calaris. It's a critical logistics hub for the Empire's Eastern Fleet. Taking it out will cripple their operations in this sector and send a message they won't forget. One of the soldiers, a wiry man named Sergeant Holt, raised an eyebrow. "What kind of resistance are we looking at?" "Heavy," Cross admitted. "Automated defenses, patrols, and a garrison of Imperial troops. But that's why we're here. We're not just taking out the depot. We're gathering intel. If there's any clue about what the Empire's planning, we'll find it." The soldiers exchanged grim looks but nodded. They were professionals, each one handpicked for their skill and resilience. They knew the stakes. The mission unfolded with brutal efficiency. Cross and his team infiltrated the depot under cover of darkness, their movements precise and silent. Explosions rippled through the facility as they planted charges, the sound of alarms drowned out by the chaos. In the heart of the depot, Cross accessed a secured terminal, his pulse steady despite the firefight raging outside. What he found made his blood run cold. A fragment of a larger plan, codenamed Eclipse. It was incomplete, but the implications were clear. The Empire wasn't just preparing for war. They were preparing to annihilate Earth. Cross transmitted the data to the Giant before leading his team to the extraction point. As the depot erupted in flames behind them, he couldn't shake the weight of what he'd uncovered. Hayden's warning hadn't just been prophetic. It had been urgent. Back aboard the Giant, Cross handed the data to General Price, his voice hard. "They're planning to hit us where it hurts most. If we don't stop them now, we won't get another chance." Price studied the files, his expression darkening. "Then we push harder. No half measures. Humanity didn't start this war, but we'll damn well finish it." In the days that followed, the first ripples of humanity's retaliation spread across the galaxy. Strikes on Empire supply lines disrupted their fleets, while propaganda broadcasts turned Hayden's final stand into a symbol of defiance. The Empire had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now it was paying the price. The starfields around the Unified Human Alliance fleet shimmered with the eerie beauty of hyperspace. General William Price stood on the bridge of the Giant, his eyes fixed on the tactical display as it painted a web of flashing points, enemy installations, fleet movements, and resource hubs. Every light represented a target, a step closer to humanity's survival or destruction. "The fleet is ready, sir," an officer reported, his voice tight with focus. "We're awaiting your orders." Price nodded, his expression carved from stone. "Begin the assault. Strike hard, strike fast. No hesitation." Across the fleet, orders were relayed and engines roared to life. Warships emerged from hyperspace like avenging shadows, their sleek hulls cutting through the void as they closed in on their targets. Humanity's counteroffensive had begun. In the heart of the giant, Captain Ronald Cross stood in the launch bay, briefing his team on their next mission. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the weight of Hayden's sacrifice and the stakes of their retaliation. "We've hit them where it hurts," Cross said, his voice steady but charged with intensity. "Now we're going to rip their guts out." The Empire's staging post at Veraces is critical to their fleet operations. Take it down, and their eastern front collapses. Dr. Henry Blake joined the briefing via hologram, his sharp features illuminated by the glow of his workstation. "The intel you retrieved from Calaris confirms Veraces isn't just a military hub," he explained. "It's also a data nexus. They're coordinating something big, but we won't know what unless we extract those files." Cross's eyes hardened. "Then we get in, get what we need, and leave nothing behind." The mission unfolded like clockwork at first. Cross's strike team infiltrated the station, moving with precision and purpose. The halls were a maze of metal and light, filled with the hum of machinery and the occasional echo of boots on steel. As Cross planted charges along key structural points, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The defenses were too sparse, the patrols too predictable. It was as if the Empire wanted them to be here. "Blake, do you have eyes on this place?" Cross hissed into his comm. "Working on it," Blake replied, his voice crackling through the interference. "The station systems are more advanced than anything we've seen before. It's like they built this place to counter us." "That doesn't sound reassuring," Sergeant Holt muttered as he set the last charge. "It's not," Blake admitted. "Get those files and get out." Quickly, the team reached the central data core, a chamber pulsating with energy. Cross accessed the terminal, his jaw tightening as he scanned the files. What he found made his stomach drop. "Price, we've got a problem," Cross said, transmitting the data back to the fleet. "They're not just planning to hit Earth. They've developed a weapon, a planetary annihilation device. And it's operational." The line went silent for a moment before Price's voice came through, cold and unflinching. "Understood. Extract your team and return to the giant. We'll adjust the strategy." But as Cross prepared to retreat, alarms blared throughout the station. The Empire had sprung its trap. Doors slammed shut, cutting off escape routes, and Imperial soldiers poured into the corridors. The firefight was brutal. Cross and his team fought with the desperation of cornered wolves, their weapons roaring as they pushed back wave after wave of attackers. The charges they had planted detonated one by one, sending tremors through the station and sowing chaos among the enemy ranks. "We're not getting out of here clean," Holt shouted over the cacophony. "We don't have to," Cross snapped back, his mind racing. "We just need to finish the job." The team regrouped at the hangar, their path littered with wreckage and fallen enemies. Cross took one last look at the station, now a collapsing ruin, before boarding the shuttle. As they launched into the void, the final charges detonated, engulfing Veraces in a cataclysmic explosion. Back aboard the giant, Cross handed the decrypted files to Dr. Blake, his face grim. "Tell me you can make sense of this." Blake scanned the data, his expression darkening with every line. "It's worse than we thought," he said. "The weapon, codenamed Eclipse, isn't just a bomb. It's a self-replicating system. They can build as many as they need, anywhere they want." Price stepped forward, his presence commanding. "How long do we have?" Blake hesitated. "Weeks, maybe less. The first target is Earth, but they'll spread it to every human colony if they succeed." The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation pressing down like a physical force. Finally, Price broke the silence, his voice steady but filled with quiet fury. Then we don't give them the chance. Prepare the fleet. We're taking this fight to their doorstep. In the days that followed, the unified human alliance launched a series of relentless strikes deep into Imperial territory. Fleet by fleet, installation by installation, humanity dismantled the Empire's infrastructure with surgical precision. Cross's team became the spearhead of these operations, their reputation growing with each success. But with every victory came greater resistance. The Empire was no longer underestimating them. It was adapting, evolving. During one such mission, Cross captured an alien commander, a pale-skinned officer with eyes that seemed to burn with hatred. Interrogating him revealed a grim truth. The Empire's desperation was driving it to extremes. "You think you've won something," the commander spat. "You've only delayed the inevitable. Eclipse will wipe you out, and we'll rebuild from the ashes." Cross clenched his fists, his voice low and dangerous. "Not if we stop you first." As the fleet regrouped for the final phase of the counteroffensive, Price addressed his officers in a closed briefing. His voice carried the weight of their collective struggle, but also a flicker of hope. "We've turned the tide, but the fight isn't over. The Empire's superweapon is the key to this war. Destroy it, and we destroy their ability to threaten us. Fail, and we lose everything." The officers exchanged determined looks, each one silently committing to the task ahead. Hayden's sacrifice had lit the spark, but it was their resolve that would carry the flame forward. As the fleet prepared to launch its most daring assault yet, a sense of quiet anticipation filled the air. The road ahead was perilous, but humanity had proven it would not be cowed. They had mobilized. They had struck back. Now, they would finish what Hayden had started. The unified human alliance fleet emerged from hyperspace like an unstoppable wave, each ship bristling with weaponry and determination. Before them loomed the Empire's superweapon, Eclipse, a monstrous construct suspended in the cold void above a lifeless planet. Its surface glittered with defensive turrets and docking bays, a testament to Imperial engineering and cruelty. On the bridge of the giant, General William Price observed the tactical display with grim focus. "This is it," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "We destroy that weapon or humanity falls. No retreat, no hesitation." Captain Ronald Cross stood nearby, his face shadowed by the weight of the moment. His team was preparing for what would likely be a one-way mission. He tightened the straps on his gear, his green eyes flickering with determination. "We'll get it done," he said firmly. Dr. Henry Blake's hologram flickered to life beside them. "The data suggests Eclipse has a central control core buried in its structure. Destroy that, and the entire system will collapse. But you'll have to fight through layers of defenses to get there." Cross gave a grim smile. "Wouldn't be fun otherwise." As the fleet surged forward, the void erupted into chaos. Imperial warships, sleek and deadly, swarmed to defend their prize. Explosions lit up the darkness, and the hum of energy weapons filled the airwaves. The giant led the charge, its guns blazing as it carved a path through the enemy lines. Cross's strike team launched in a sleek assault shuttle, weaving through the battle with precision. The shuttle shook violently as it dodged incoming fire, but Cross's voice remained steady. "Focus. We've trained for worse." They breached Eclipse's hull with a controlled explosion, stepping into the belly of the beast. The corridors were a maze of gleaming metal and pulsating lights, every corner bristling with danger. Imperial soldiers poured in from every direction, their weapons firing with deadly accuracy. "Move! Keep the formation tight," Cross shouted, leading the charge. His rifle barked with precision, cutting down enemies as they advanced. Beside him, Sergeant Holt provided covering fire, his sharp eyes scanning for threats. As they pushed deeper, the station seemed to come alive. Automated turrets descended from the ceiling, forcing the team to dive for cover. Cross barked orders, directing his soldiers to disable the defenses while keeping their momentum. Blake's voice crackled over the comm. You're close to the control core, but the energy readings are off the charts. Be careful. Define careful, Holt muttered, slamming a charge against a locked door. When the team finally reached the core chamber, they found it guarded by an elite squad of Imperial soldiers. The battle was brutal, the air thick with smoke and the screams of dying men. Cross fought with everything he had, his movements a blur of precision and fury. One by one, his team fell around him, each death a blow to his resolve. But Cross pressed on, his vision narrowing to the towering control core at the center of the room. It pulsed with a malevolent light, a symbol of everything the Empire had wrought. As he planted the charges, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, pale-skinned Imperial commander with piercing blue eyes. The alien's voice was cold and mocking. "You think you can stop us? Humanity's defiance is admirable, but futile." Cross turned to face him, his rifle steady despite the exhaustion in his limbs. "You don't know humanity. We don't stop. We don't break." The commander raised a weapon, but Cross was faster. His shot pierced the alien's armor, sending him crumpling to the floor. With the charges in place, Cross activated the timer and turned to leave. But as he moved, an explosion rocked the station, throwing him to the ground. His calm crackled with Price's voice. "Cross, what's your status?" "Charges set," Cross grunted, pulling himself to his feet. "But the place is coming apart faster than expected. You need to get out of there. Now!" Price ordered. Cross sprinted to the collapsing corridors, the station groaning under the strain of its impending destruction. Fires raged around him, and debris rained from above, but he pushed forward, his focus unwavering. He reached the extraction point just as the shuttle arrived, its engines roaring. Holt, bloodied but alive, waved him aboard. "Thought you weren't going to make it," Holt said with a faint grin. "Never doubted it," Cross replied, collapsing into a seat as the shuttle rocketed away. From the safety of the shuttle, they watched as Eclipse imploded, its massive structure collapsing in on itself before erupting into a brilliant explosion. The shockwave rippled through the void, scattering debris and silencing the battle. Aboard the Giant, the bridge erupted into cheers. Price allowed himself a rare smile, though his eyes remained fixed on the display. "Well done," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet pride. As the fleet regrouped, the remnants of the Imperial forces scattered, their will to fight shattered. Humanity had done the impossible. It had faced the Empire's greatest weapon and emerged victorious. In the aftermath, Cross stood on the bridge of the Giant, looking out at the stars. The loss of his team weighed heavily on him, but he knew their sacrifice had not been in vain. Price joined him, his expression contemplative. "You did good out there," he said. "We all did," Cross replied, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "But this isn't over, is it?" Price shook his head. "No, the Empire's still out there. But we've shown them we're not to be underestimated. They'll think twice before coming after us again." Cross nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we'll be ready." As the fleet set a course for home, the stars seemed brighter, the void less oppressive. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and prevailed, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the indomitable spirit of those who refused to bow. The war was far from over, but for the first time in generations, there was hope. And for humanity, that was more than enough.